I never thought the girl I tormented in high school would be the one to pull me from the wreckage of my own making. But life has a way of twisting the knife just when you think you're untouchable. My name is Alex, and for years, my world was a meticulously constructed fortress of success. From my penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, the city lights sparkled like scattered diamonds, each one a testament to the empire I was building. I drove a Porsche 911, wore bespoke suits from Madison Avenue, and my name was whispered in hushed tones in boardrooms from Wall Street to Silicon Valley. I was a senior executive at Sterling Holdings, a name synonymous with ruthless efficiency and groundbreaking innovation. My mornings began with a triple-shot espresso and a quick scan of the financial news, always looking for the next acquisition, the next opportunity to expand my influence. My days were a blur of high-stakes meetings, power lunches at the grill, and late nights poring over spreadsheets, fueled by the intoxicating rush of ambition. My colleagues admired me, my subordinates feared me, and my investors adored me. I was, by all accounts, living the American dream, or at least my version of it. But even the most polished facades can crack, and mine began to splinter with the news of Project Chimera. It was supposed to be my magnum opus, a venture capital fund targeting disruptive tech startups, promising unprecedented returns. I'd poured 2 years of my life, every ounce of my strategic cunning, into it. We were weeks from launch, ready to announce a multi-billion-dollar fund when the whispers started. First, a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor in the market, then a full-blown earthquake. A key partner pulled out, citing unforeseen complications. Then another, and another. The entire structure, built so carefully on my reputation and contacts, began to crumble. My perfectly normal world, where success was a given and failure an abstract concept for others, started to tilt violently. I'd always been the one pulling the strings, never the puppet. Now I felt like a marionette with every string severed, falling headfirst into an abyss. My boss, Mr. Harrison, a man whose handshake once felt like an endorsement from God himself, called me into his office, his face grim. The polished mahogany desk seemed to shrink, the panoramic view of the city suddenly oppressive. He didn't yell. He just spoke in a low, even tone, each word a hammer blow. "Alex, Project Chimera is dead, and so is your position here." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Demotion, termination, disgrace. These were things that happened to other people, lesser people. Not to me. I tried to argue, to plead, to offer solutions, but his gaze was unyielding. "Your ambition overrode your judgment, Alex. You made promises you couldn't keep, put the firm at too great a risk. We're cutting our losses." He handed me a severance package that, while substantial, felt like blood money. It was the ultimate humiliation. I walked out of Sterling Holdings, a ghost in my own skin. The once familiar lobby, now a sterile alien space. My Porsche felt like a hollow shell, my penthouse a gilded cage. I spent weeks in a haze, the financial pages I once devoured now a painful reminder of my downfall. Friends, the fair-weather variety, disappeared. The phone, once constantly buzzing with deals and opportunities, went silent. My carefully constructed life had evaporated. The irony wasn't lost on me. All that power, all that money, and it vanished in a blink, leaving me utterly adrift. The sheer, unadulterated shock of it made my stomach churn. I remembered a vague, fleeting image, a girl with quiet eyes, her backpack too big for her frame, walking alone through the bustling halls of Northwood High. Why that memory chose that moment to surface, I couldn't tell you. Perhaps my subconscious was already trying to tell me something, a premonition of the reckoning to come. A tiny, almost insignificant thought, swallowed quickly by the overwhelming anxiety of my immediate future. My perfect life had been shattered, and I had no idea how to pick up the pieces, or who, if anyone, would even bother to help me. It was a terrifying, humbling experience, and one that began to chip away at the layers of arrogance I had carefully cultivated for years. The solitude of my sprawling apartment became a living nightmare, each echo a reminder of my spectacular failure. The email landed in my inbox like a digital bomb. Regarding your application for the senior consultant position at Horizon Labs. I stared at the sender's name, Dr. Evelyn Reed. The name itself meant nothing to me initially, but the company, Horizon Labs, was a beacon of innovation in biotech, a startup poised to revolutionize personalized medicine. It was a long shot, a desperate attempt to claw my way back into the professional world after being blacklisted by the traditional finance firms. I had customized my resume, emphasized my leadership skills and strategic vision, glossing over the specifics of my recent departure from Sterling Holdings. My interview was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I spent days researching Horizon Labs, memorizing their mission statement, dissecting their latest patents. This was my chance, my only shot at redemption or at least re-employment. I couldn't afford to screw it up. My usual swagger had been replaced by a gnawing anxiety, a desperate need to prove myself again. The morning of the interview, I put on my sharpest suit, the irony of dressing for a hopeful new beginning in the uniform of my past failure not lost on me. As I walked into the sleek, modern lobby of Horizon Labs, all glass and polished concrete, I felt a familiar flicker of the old ambition. But it was tinged with a new, unsettling nervousness. The receptionist, a bright-eyed young woman, directed me to a conference room. "Dr. Reed will be with you shortly," she chirped. I sat at a long, gleaming table, reviewing my mental notes, trying to project an air of calm confidence I definitely didn't feel. The door opened, and a woman stepped in. She was poised, dressed in a tailored blazer, her hair pulled back neatly. Her eyes, intelligent and a striking shade of hazel, met mine. My breath hitched. It was her, Evelyn, the girl I had tormented in high school. The recognition was instantaneous, a punch to the gut that stole the air from my lungs. She looked older, of course, but the core of her, the quiet strength that had always been there beneath the surface, was unmistakable. My mind reeled, a torrent of vivid, horrifying memories flooding my consciousness. Evelyn Miller, not Reed. She must have married. The blood drained from my face, and I felt a cold dread seep into my bones. This wasn't just an interview anymore. This was a reckoning. She offered a polite, professional smile, extending her hand. "Mr. Thorne, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Dr. Evelyn Reed, CEO of Horizon Labs." Her voice was calm, steady, betraying no hint of recognition. My hand trembled slightly as I shook hers, 1,000 silent apologies screaming in my mind. The touch was brief, but it sent a jolt through me, a sickening mixture of guilt and terror. She clearly hadn't forgotten. How could she? The image of her head bowed, clutching her textbooks, as I, along with my obnoxious entourage, sneered at her in the Northwood High cafeteria, played on a loop in my head. Or the time we accidentally tripped her, scattering her art supplies across the hallway, laughing as she scrambled to pick them up, her face flushed with humiliation. These memories, once buried deep under layers of ambition and self-congratulation, now clawed their way to the surface with shocking clarity. You ever look back at something you did as a kid and just burn with shame? That's exactly how I felt. Every fiber of my being screamed for me to run, to invent an emergency, to disappear. But I couldn't. This was my last shot, and she held it in her hand. The interview began, and I tried to focus, tried to project the articulate, confident professional I used to be. My answers felt hollow, my rehearsed lines ringing false in my own ears. Evelyn, however, was impeccably composed. She asked incisive questions about my experience, my leadership philosophy, my vision for Horizon Labs. Her gaze was analytical, searching. But still, she gave no outward sign that she remembered the skinny, awkward girl I had made miserable. Was she playing a long game? Was this her ultimate revenge? My paranoia was reaching fever pitch. During a lull, she casually mentioned Northwood High, reminiscing about the old town library, a place where she'd spent countless hours. My heart pounded against my ribs. It was a micro-trigger, a subtle test. She was fishing. I forced a polite, non-committal chuckle, trying to act as if I had no particular connection to the place, even as images of me and my buddies driving past the library, yelling taunts at kids studying inside, flashed through my mind. It was a weak deflection, and I knew it. She paused, her hazel eyes fixed on mine for a beat longer than necessary. "So, you didn't grow up around there then, Mr. Thorne?" she asked, her tone still even, but with an almost imperceptible edge. My mouth went dry. "Oh no, I was in a neighboring district for most of my schooling," I lied, the words feeling like sandpaper on my tongue. "Moved around a bit." The lie felt pathetic, transparent. She simply nodded, her expression unreadable, then seamlessly pivoted back to business, discussing Horizon Labs' strategic roadmap. The rest of the interview passed in a blur of my panicked responses and her calm, collected assessments. I walked out of that office feeling utterly defeated, not by my professional prospects, but by the overwhelming weight of my past. The hope I had clutched onto was gone, replaced by a certainty that my karma had finally caught up to me. She hadn't overtly retaliated, but the implicit power dynamic, the unspoken history, was a far more potent weapon. A week later, to my utter astonishment, I received an offer from Horizon Labs. The position was senior consultant, a prestigious role, with a salary that would stabilize my finances, though it was a step down from my Sterling Holdings days. Evelyn Reed had extended me a lifeline. My immediate reaction was a mix of immense relief and profound confusion. Why? Why would she do this? Was it a trick? Was she setting me up for a public humiliation? My paranoia, already simmering, flared into a full-blown inferno. I spent days dissecting the offer, searching for a hidden clause, a trapdoor. But there was nothing. It was a legitimate offer, generous terms, and a clear path forward. Still, the guilt gnawed at me. How could I accept help from someone I had so cruelly wronged? My mind went back to a specific day, 8th grade, the Halloween dance. Evelyn, shy and awkward, had spent weeks making her own elaborate fairy costume. I, along with my friends, thought it would be hilarious to prank her. We filled a bucket with glitter and cheap hairspray, waiting until she walked under a specific spot, then doused her, ruining her costume and her night. She had run out crying, her beautiful fairy wings dripping with sticky, shimmering goo, and we had laughed until our stomachs ached. The memory was a fresh wound, festering in the back of my mind. I took the job. I had no other options, and a part of me, a small, desperate part, hoped that perhaps this was a chance, however unlikely, for a perverse kind of redemption. My first few weeks at Horizon Labs were a tightrope walk. I was polite, professional, and kept a wide berth from Evelyn. She, in turn, treated me with the same professionalism she extended to all her executives. There was no warmth, no animosity, just a cool, efficient working relationship. This detached approach only amplified my unease. I was constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, for her to call me into her office and expose my past, to watch me squirm. I spent countless hours trying to decipher her expressions, her subtle gestures, searching for any hint of the venom I deserved. But there was none. She was a brilliant leader, inspiring her team, driving innovation with a clear vision and unwavering commitment. I found myself, despite my internal turmoil, respecting her. More than respecting her, I was genuinely impressed. She had built this company from the ground up, a true visionary. The more I observed her, the more I understood the depth of my past cruelty. My actions had been born of insecurity and a need to assert dominance, a petty desire to feel powerful by making others feel small. Her achievements, in stark contrast, were built on intelligence, hard work, and genuine empathy. I began to see the chasm between who I was then and who she had become. The false sense of resolution I'd felt after accepting the job had completely dissolved, replaced by a growing, unbearable weight of guilt. I knew deep down that this wasn't over. My past would haunt me until I faced it head-on. My work at Horizon Labs was good, surprisingly good. I poured all my energy into it, desperate to prove myself, to justify the chance Evelyn had given me. I wasn't just trying to rebuild my career. I was trying to rebuild my sense of self-worth. I started to notice the little things about Evelyn, the way she encouraged junior researchers, her genuine excitement over scientific breakthroughs, the quiet authority she commanded in every room. My past image of her, the shy, bullied girl, began to erode, replaced by the formidable woman she had become. Yet the memories of my cruelty still clawed at me, especially when our paths inevitably crossed in the office. One afternoon, I saw her reviewing some old photographs on her desk. They looked like high school pictures. My heart stopped. I quickly averted my gaze, pretending to be engrossed in a report, but the image of a faded picture, perhaps of her and her friends, or even a school event, sent a chill down my spine. It was a micro-trigger, a reminder that our past was always lurking just beneath the surface. I started volunteering for extra projects, working late, anything to keep my mind occupied and away from the uncomfortable silence that always seemed to follow our brief interactions. The tension was becoming unbearable. One evening, working late, I found an old, forgotten USB drive tucked away in the back of my desk drawer, a relic from my high school days. Curiosity, or perhaps self-flagellation, got the better of me. I plugged it into my laptop. It contained old photos, cheesy videos, and a few archived instant messenger logs from my teenage years. Scrolling through them, I stumbled upon a conversation between me and my friend, Mike, from our junior year. It was about Evelyn. "Hey, you see Miller trying to get into the National Honor Society. What a joke," I'd typed, followed by a string of cruel comments about her intelligence, her clothes, her social awkwardness. Mike's replies were equally nasty. We were truly awful. But then I scrolled further down and found a different thread, one between Mike and another friend a few days later. Mike was complaining about Evelyn. "Dude, Miller's dad just got laid off, lost their house, and she's been a wreck. She's trying to get that NHS scholarship to pay for college, but she's totally shut down." My heart sank. I'd never known. I'd never bothered to know. I'd been so consumed by my own petty need for social status, my own immature desire for power, that I hadn't seen her real struggles, her vulnerability. I hadn't just been mean, I had been blind. And now she was giving me a job, a second chance, when she was the one who had truly suffered. The truth hit me with the force of a physical blow, roles completely inverted. I was the one who deserved nothing, and she, the one I had wronged, was offering me salvation. The next few days were a blur of self-loathing. I couldn't look Evelyn in the eye without seeing that struggling girl trying to navigate a world that seemed determined to crush her. And me, an active participant in that crushing. I became withdrawn, quiet. Evelyn noticed. She called me into her office, her expression more concerned than cool. "Alex, is everything all right? You seem distracted." Her question was gentle, but it felt like an accusation. I could no longer pretend. I took a deep breath, the confession bubbling up from a place I hadn't known existed within me. "Evelyn," I started, my voice hoarse. I have to tell you something." My throat tightened. "I know who you are, and I remember everything." The words were out. Her hazel eyes, which had been filled with a mild concern, now sharpened, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. She didn't flinch, didn't react overtly, but I could feel the atmosphere in the room change, thick with unspoken history. "Alex, if this is about your performance, we can discuss it," she began, her tone still professional, but I cut her off. "No. It's not about my performance here, it's about my performance back then, in high school, at Northwood." My voice cracked on the last word. I was a bully, Evelyn, a cruel, arrogant jerk, and you were one of my targets. The silence that followed was deafening. Every beat of my heart was a hammer against my ribs. What would you do if the person you hurt the most held your future in their hands? That was my reality now. She leaned back in her chair, her gaze unwavering. "I know, Alex," she said softly, her voice still calm, but now tinged with a weariness I hadn't heard before. "I've always known." The words hit me harder than any anger or accusation could have. She knew, and still, she gave me a job. My shame, already immense, swelled to an unbearable level. Her confession that she always knew broke something within me. All my elaborate defenses, my carefully constructed walls of denial, crumbled in an instant. There was no escaping it now. The pretense was over. "Why?" I whispered, the word barely audible. "Why did you hire me then? After everything?" Her gaze softened slightly, a complex mixture of pity and resolve. "Because I saw your resume, Alex. I saw the experience, the talent, and I saw something else too, a man who had clearly taken a fall, a man who was desperate for a second chance. I believe in second chances." Her words were a balm, and yet they cut deeper than any insult. She, the victim of my past cruelty, was extending grace, while I, the perpetrator, had been incapable of such compassion. My head swam with images. Her crying in the hallway, the ruined costume, the quiet sadness in her eyes. I had never bothered to understand her story, her struggles. I had been too busy being the king of my petty high school kingdom. The realization washed over me, a tidal wave of regret. My actions weren't just about making her feel bad. They were about my own deep-seated insecurities, my desperate need to control, to feel superior. I had projected my own failings onto her, turning her into a punching bag for my own fears. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a profound character flaw that had followed me into adulthood, contributing to the very arrogance that led to my downfall at Sterling Holdings. I felt a tear trace a path down my cheek, something I hadn't done in years. The dam had broken. "I'm so incredibly sorry, Evelyn," I choked out, my voice thick with emotion. "For everything. I was a monster. I had no idea what you were going through, and I didn't care. I was selfish, cruel. I have no excuse." She listened, her expression unreadable, letting me unravel. It wasn't about forgiveness yet. It was about the raw, painful act of true confession. I wasn't making excuses. I was laying bare the ugliest parts of myself. The weight of it was suffocating, but also, paradoxically, liberating. This was my Virada 4, the moral discovery, the moment I truly understood my own profound failing. She finally spoke, her voice low. "It took me a long time to get past it, Alex. Years. You and your friends made high school a living hell. But I also learned something from it. I learned resilience. I learned to find my strength from within, because I couldn't rely on anyone else. And it made me who I am today." Her words were not an absolution, but a statement of fact, a testament to her own journey. And then came the dilemma, unspoken, but palpable. She had saved my life once by giving me this job, pulling me out of the professional wreckage. But now she was offering me a chance to save myself, truly save myself, by confronting the man I had been. "I don't expect your forgiveness, Evelyn," I said, looking her directly in the eye, my gaze unwavering for the first time. "But I need to try to earn it. I need to do something, anything. This wasn't about my job anymore. It was about my soul." She nodded slowly. "There's something you could do, Alex." My heart leaped. "Anything. Name it." She paused, considering. "Horizon Labs is launching a new initiative next quarter. It's a scholarship and mentorship program for underprivileged kids in STEM, specifically targeting students from low-income communities. We're calling it the Northwood Futures Fund." My blood ran cold. And I need someone to head it up," she continued, her gaze piercing. Someone with your business acumen, your strategic mind, but also someone who understands the importance of second chances. Someone who knows what it feels like to be on both sides of the fence. It won't be glamorous, no big bonuses, no splashy headlines. Just hard, honest work helping kids who might otherwise fall through the cracks. Kids who might be bullied or feel invisible, like I once did. The choice hung heavy in the air. The Northwood Futures Fund. It was a direct callback to my past, a daily reminder of my sins, but also a path to genuine atonement. It meant sacrificing my desire for a quick return to the corporate elite, for a high-profile, high-paying position. It meant public humility, working to uplift the very kind of people I had once dismissed. It was an emotional decision, not a logical one. My old self would have scoffed at such a demotion, such a lack of personal glory. But the man sitting there now, humbled and broken, saw only one path forward. "I'll do it," I said, the words firm, resolute. "I'll do anything to make it a success." My voice cracked again, but this time not from fear, but from a profound sense of purpose. This was the ultimate climax, the moment I tore down the last remnants of my old, arrogant self. It was a choice between continuing to chase power and money or finally seeking true forgiveness and redemption, not for her, but for myself. My emotional collapse wasn't a sudden burst of tears. It was the quiet surrender of my ego, the painful acceptance of a new, humbler path. It wasn't about proving myself anymore. It was about serving. She gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile, the first genuine warmth I'd seen from her since that fateful interview. "Good, Alex, I thought you would." The Northwood Futures Fund became my life's work. I poured every ounce of my strategic thinking, my networking skills, and my newfound empathy into it. I traveled to underserved communities, spoke to struggling students, and built relationships with teachers and mentors. It wasn't glamorous, as Evelyn had predicted. There were no private jets or power lunches. My name wasn't splashed across the financial pages, but there was a different kind of reward, a satisfaction that surpassed any financial gain. I saw the light in a young girl's eyes when she received a scholarship to coding camp. I felt the gratitude of a high school senior who finally believed he could get into college. Each success, however small, chipped away at the immense guilt I carried, replacing it with a quiet sense of purpose. Evelyn remained my boss, and our professional relationship evolved into something akin to a complex partnership. There was an unspoken understanding between us, a shared history that now, miraculously, bound us together in a common cause. We didn't become best friends, nor did she ever fully forget the past. And I never expected her to. How could she? The scars of those years ran deep, not just for her, but for me too, though mine were of a different kind. One afternoon, a year into the program, Evelyn called me into her office. She handed me a neatly bound report detailing the successes of the Northwood Futures Fund. The numbers were impressive, the impact tangible. "You've done incredible work, Alex," she said, her voice sincere. "This fund is making a real difference." I simply nodded, humbled. "It's because of you, Evelyn. You gave me the chance." She looked out at the city skyline, a contemplative expression on her face. "You know, Alex, sometimes the greatest revenge is living well. But sometimes the greatest redemption is helping others live well." It wasn't an explicit statement of forgiveness, but it was closer than I ever thought I'd get. There was no easy Hollywood ending where we embraced and all was forgotten. That wouldn't have been real. The past lingered, a quiet shadow, but it no longer consumed us. My bank account was healthy again, my professional reputation slowly rebuilding, but the Alex Thorne, who drove the Porsche and lived in the penthouse, was gone, replaced by someone irrevocably changed. I had faced my demons, not in a courtroom or a public forum, but in the quiet chambers of my own conscience. She had saved my life, not once, but twice. First, by pulling me from the abyss of professional failure, and second, by showing me a path to true purpose and self-forgiveness. And if, in the end, forgiveness was the greatest currency of all, she'd given me a wealth beyond measure.